BJ Counsel. I view the world through the lens of having been followed by a white clerk as a child while shopping in a five and dime. I'm a retired police executive and own UN50, which gives guidance on surviving interactions with police.
I'm Harmony Chavis, and I view the world through the lens of one of the most misunderstood and diverse generations in our nation's history. I'm a social worker and a believer of radical kindness and love as modalities of healing.
My name is Andrew Counsel. I view the world through the lens of a generational camera phone. I wake up as a black male and go to bed as a black male. I am surviving this never-ending court case we commonly call life in the best way I know how.
All right, welcome to UN50. This is our first one for the year of 2023, and I appreciate those of you that are joining us for the first time, and for those of you that have been followers and kind of hanging there with us, welcome back. As usual, just so you know, my name is BJ Counsel. I have UN50, and UN50 is a business that primarily helps to train community members, primarily Black and Brown individuals, on how to safely interact with law enforcement. We use UN50 to have different types of discussions because I believe, as a retired police executive, that it's larger than law enforcement. So we talk about issues concerning mental health, things that drive crime that don't necessarily rest at the doorstep of law enforcement. So the conversation is, again, like I said, I believe is much bigger than law enforcement. The discussions can be comfortable or uncomfortable, and that's what we try to do here. Today, I'm really excited because I have two individuals who, one I met because someone introduced me or showed me her opinion piece in a U.S. Today piece, and then another one is a team member that just joined the team there. So I'm going to introduce first Miss Finesse Moreno-Rivera. Again, a friend of mine named Addie, who I work with, introduced me to her based on an article that she wrote for the U.S. Today paper that was issued on November 20th of 2022. And the title of "Police Kill Far Too Many People During Traffic Stop. We Must Change Why Stops Are Made." And in that article that kind of caught my eye was teaching people how to safely interact. And it was like ding, 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 ding. And she has a psychologist. She has a BA psychological in psychology, University of Kentucky. I think a master's finesse in forensics from Rogers Williams, and she does work with state and federal on conducting research. But what brought me to her, besides the article, was the data. And so, Finesse, you want to kind of take it from there and tell us a little bit about yourself before I get too far down that rabbit hole and not give you your kudos like I'm supposed to?
You've done a great job so far, BJ. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about today's discussion. I will say I've always had a passion for criminal justice, specifically looking at evidence-based policy and utilizing data to make our streets safer, specifically, though, for people of color. So again, I have strived to continue to work on my writing as well as my speaking. I've been bringing this to the forefront and just having a voice for our community. So thank you for having me.
Thanks. I mean, and that's exactly, I think before we started talking, before we started doing just before we started doing this, we were talking about, what Finesse was saying, we're three women of color. And we're talking about our community and trying to have these difficult conversations. Sometimes can be uncomfortable. And so what we're going to be doing may end up annoying some of you, but we're going to be doing it in a manner that we believe is going to save your life and inform you as to how to move through the space of police reform and what that looks like. And that's what we want to help you with. The other person here is Kelly Childress. She is a UN50 team member. Has a master's in sociology with the concentration in criminology, graduate of UNC Greensboro here in North Carolina. Some of her topics that she used was the prison to school pipeline, racial bias in policing, and reentry programs for formerly incarcerated women. And she has a passion for data. So she now, again, is a part of the UN50 team crunching numbers, and we're going to kind of get into that a little bit too, because she's looking at the Washington Post fatal shooting data. She's actually going through that, so we can start looking at that and having a conversation about that data. So Kelly, you want to kind of share a little bit about yourself if you want?
Yeah,
So I am a graduate, as BJ said, from UNCG Greensboro with a criminology background. My interest is really in data as well as looking at formerly incarcerated Black women. And so that's what I did my thesis there on and looking at life history interviews. So along with the data, I also am into like qualitative analysis and doing life history interviews. But yeah, so as BJ said, I'm looking at the Washington Post data for her right now to kind of just see what kind of information we can pull from that. How are people responding to law enforcement, as well as how are law enforcement responding to their community? So, yeah.
Thanks. Vanessa, since I kind of ran you down after I saw that article, let's talk about that article because it really kind of got, obviously it piqued my interest because you also, like I said, in the opinion piece talked about we got to figure out how to interact with law enforcement, the community itself. But I think you also talked about the fact that using traffic stops to make money. I think you might have said something about that, or how traffic stops are used in particular communities. Can go ahead and just kind of talk about that article, just so people go and again, it was November 20th, 22. If anybody wants to read the article, please go take a look at the opinion piece. But I kind of want her to kind of talk about what led her to that particular piece.
Sure. So, honestly, whenever you're writing an article, you're just going through and using anything that you see on a news feed. And as soon as I saw something about police killing, more individuals now within this year, or excuse me, last year, within the past decade, that just really upset me because I'm thinking, what's going on? We just lost George Floyd. You would think that with all these police reforms going on, that we wouldn't be seeing, police killing 3 or more people a day.
Right.
And so when I started to dig within the data, the open source data, which thank you so much for mapping police violence provides, and having a data background and being able to analyze that, I was like, hold on a minute. A lot of these are just based off of minor crimes, such as traffic stops. I'm thinking that can't be good because as we all know now that Black and brown people are disproportionately stopped more so than non-color individuals as it is. So I'm thinking, okay, I got to dig into this data a little bit more. And sure enough, where I was finding was that we are losing a lot of individuals on the side of the road, whether they were compliant or non-compliant. And a lot of times, the individuals who were supposedly had a weapon didn't, which was really, really, unfortunate. But then what's more troubling is that when you're looking into the analysis and all of the grant funding and the money that's funneled into the police departments, we're losing individuals' lives based off of money. That's what this is based off of. It's because it's thinking about how they're being funded and how the town is being funded. It is literally based off of traffic violations. And not only is it putting citizens, specifically Black and brown citizens, in more danger of losing their lives, given the fact that sometimes, yes, they are non-compliant, but you got to think about our history with police. You get tired. You get tired of having the compliant one. But nevertheless, here we are losing our lives based off of money. It is based off of money. And that just needs to stop because not only are we losing our lives, but so are police officers. And it's become just way too dangerous, way, way, way too dangerous for everyone involved.
Right. Yeah, and I appreciate, you saying that about, and that's not, and I want folks, at least from my perspective as a police officer, that doesn't happen in all communities. Because especially in police, when you're talking about, I guess, yeah, I'll use the word progressive police departments, because we're not interested in, we're telling, if you have a progressive police department, there basically should be, or I would hope that they're telling their officers now, regulatory vehicle violations is a moot point at this point. My tail light out, my brake lights out should not be a reason that you pulling me over because, or either my registration, because obviously if I can't afford to get it fixed, I certainly can't afford a $200 ticket. You know what I'm saying? Unless there's something else to go along with that. You're a suspect in a violent crime, whatever. But just to be pulling it over because of that, and then we find out it's part of the community coffers, that's when it becomes, and it does have an impact on marginalized folks because obviously I'm going to a $9 job and all my stuff in my car is not working. and I got to get to work. And I don't like the police to begin with. And then so my attitude toward you is going to be pretty much kind of rough. So now the officer's on the defense. He or she's concerned about their lives. And then, like you said, somebody may end up getting injured and or killed. So yeah, it's people don't really think about it that granularly, but that really that's it in our history.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and then
I mean,
we got Kelly looking at it from, the stuff that the Washington Post is looking at, who we're interacting with, and from that perspective. So, based on what she just said, Kelly, and the work that you're doing for UN50, what do you have to say about that as well?
Um, so I guess when you were speaking, Finesse, I was really thinking about why officers stop people for these minor violations. Because a lot of, like you had spoken about, a lot of these crimes are minor things. We're not looking at major crimes. We're stopping people for minor violations, not traffic stops, but like lights out, tail lights, and that kind of stuff. And so what is from the officer's point of view, is there an ulterior motive? Like you said, is there money involved? Or are we hoping to find that person had a warrant? So for example, I saw one particular case in the Washington Post where the officer stopped him for a traffic violation, but then found that he had a warrant or found some other situation. So is it that, I guess that's what I'm trying to say, if that makes sense, trying to put in.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
So whenever I was looking at the data source, I actually coded it on my own. So I coded it by mental illness as well as suspected alcohol involved. I also coded it by the officer having an actual reason to stop an individual.
Yeah.
So there was a call of service out. Or then also I had it for, there was no reason that was given for the officer stopping the vehicle. You have to understand with this data set, and I went through all 700 cases, is that a lot of times that police officers were reporting that they just stopped an individual, and we have no idea why. The media outlets didn't say why, but then also in a lot of cases, the police departments refused to give the information as to why the officer was stopping the individual, or said they would hold that information. So there is definitely a lot of transparency within the data that I was working with, but it was very interesting to have that and be able to capture that and say, why don't you want to release the reason why the officer was stopping someone anyway?
So that's
And
so that's an interesting point that we bring up with the data. So there are data sets where they're voluntary. So not everybody, every organization has to opt into them. So when we're talking about like the community and looking at data, I think that there needs to be, like you said, some transparency and understanding that, hey, what if your community is not opting into the data that's then reported out to people? So I think that's important too, that the community is aware that your part of your community or part of your state or local government might not be opting in to that data, or there might be stuff that they're withholding from the data in terms of what crime looks like in your community.
Man, you guys are doing it right the way I want you to do it, buddy. I mean, you're absolutely right. Go ahead. What do you say, Finesse?
This is awesome. Sorry, BJ, because right before you got on this call, Kelly, I was looking into the FBI, right? We all know that they, collect every year UCR data. Well, they announced 7 years ago that they were going to go over to a new system, the NIBR system, which collects more data, more detailed data. And again, 7 years ago, the government invested millions of dollars to ensure that local police departments, which we know there are over 18,000 with the US, were able to make this transition without any issues. They had enough time. Yet we were still seeing municipalities such as New York, California, Pennsylvania, who did not report any data for the year of 2020. So when the FBI released their report in 2021, we had a lot of data missing. We had a lot of data missing. So we still don't even know, what's going on when it comes to our violent crime. And midterms just ended, and a lot of our politicians were really touting about, being tough on crime. That's a huge point. Yet we all know that we have incomplete data. So I think that it definitely, I'm so happy you brought this up, Kelly, that there is it's not mandatory for our law enforcement, entities to
Mhm.
be reporting their data. And if they're not mandatory, then all we're getting is all these voluntary, numbers. And we're just working with what
Yeah.
we have. So I'm so happy that you brought that up. I'm so
Yeah.
happy that you brought
Oh, but okay, you guys, okay, this is cool. First of all, there are two things I want to jump that you talked about the community, and that's one thing I wanted to talk about. To help the community understand, you can ask your local agency, what are you tracking? And if you're not tracking what you think they need to be tracking, then you need to ask them to track that.
Yeah.
There's a power thing there. There's the community, and then the elected officials. If you want your aid, you want to know, and why aren't you reporting to the FBI?
Mhm.
You want them to report, be a part of that. And I think I'm also surprised you said New York, because what I was getting ready to say, Finesse, was that a lot of stuff, and this is going to be a plug for you guys, that especially small agencies and our budget don't have the capability of having someone to sit in and do crime analysis. So if
Yeah.
anybody knows a small agency, I got two women right here. They can do the data, they can crunch some data for you. Because really that's going to help you as a community figure out what's happening in your
Mm.
law enforcement agency. And then
Yeah.
also when you talk, and I want to get back to the New York thing because I'm really surprised at that. But we gotta make sure community members understand you can ask this, and also law enforcement leadership can say to its officers, the low hanging fruit like regulatory violations, don't bother. They
Mhm.
can do that. They
Mhm.
they can do that as leaders. I can tell my officers, I don't want you out here stopping for inspection stickers. I don't want you out here stopping for tail lights, unless of course the vehicle fits the description of something, a major crime. That's a good way to stop. I don't have a problem with that.
Mhm.
But just to be doing that is a directive that law enforcement leadership can in fact tell their officers to do.
Mm.
Mhm. Okay.
That is
So
something
with
they
the
can do. Yeah, that's something they can do, because especially in small towns and small communities, if my tail lights out and I'm going to a job and I got to decide on lights out or tail fixing my tail light in my car, I'm paying
Mhm.
for my lights in my house. You pulling me over and giving me a $300 ticket mean I can't go to work, still can't get my car fixed, and ain't nobody want nothing.
Mm.
So
BJ, I have a
Vanessa, go
I have a
ahead.
question for you. You just
Yeah, good.
you're like, I can say that as the leadership. I can say, don't worry about, X, Y, and Z. Do you think that due to the whole movement of defunding the police and the lack of police that we're seeing on the streets now, because they are leaving in droves, do you think
Mhm.
that that may be impacting anything that we're seeing with, stopping individuals or not even stopping anyone? I've read multiple articles where police have just been like, throw their hands up in the air and said, you know what? No, I'm not even going to stop anybody. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just read an article and I don't know where it was, but I'm okay with that. I think individuals leaving the organization and the industry right now probably need to go anyway. I think it's a positive thing
Mm.
because if you're saying that you're mad because now I'm telling you can't do X, then actually it's called protect and serve.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. I
You know what I'm
think
saying?
we,
So if you're just
yeah.
here just to write people tickets and do law enforcement, then you're kind of missing the whole point of what law enforcement is about. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
throwing your hands up and saying they tie my hands, I can't do my job, but well, doing
Mm.
your job and writing tickets ain't exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be helping people in crisis. So yeah, I'm
And
okay with people running out the door because the people running out the door, in my opinion, aren't the ones that need to be here anyway. So go ahead, Kelly.
yeah, no, yes. I was gonna piggyback on your point because I think we might have been reading the same article. Because at the end of the article, he said that basically police officers, we're not here to, well, they're here to serve. And so I think that's the missing piece of it. That why, for example, Finesse, you had talked about the traffic stops and monetary gains from it. When did we get to a point where we're using money as a way for crime to build? So is there a reason why why we're continuing not to stop crime, or not to, I guess, looking at crime as a sense of crime being more, there's being more crime. So like you said, the main point of police is to serve. And I think we've gotten away from that, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I like to play devil's advocate, so I had to ask.
Mhm.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. No.
I have to ask. I have to, because I know people are thinking it when they're listening to it or watching us, and it's like, okay, well, I gotta ask.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing, yeah, and I'm all about the people that are leaving because what I'm all, because whenever we're talking about the Gen Zs and the Gen whatever the Y, whatever's next, right? It does well, it's nothing after Z. But bottom line is those individuals that are coming into this law enforcement now, that's the next generation. Those are the ones that have seen the George Floyd, the Michael Browns, and so they're coming in with this whole we want to do better.
Yeah.
These are the kids who are coming in that had a black president. You know what I'm saying? So that's who's coming in. So they have a whole they're more diverse, they're more inclusive, so they get it. There may not be up in as far as upper management, some of them right now, but the next generation of the new law enforcement of inclusive and diverse, they're in the building. They just may not be in positions of supervision or management, but they are in the building. I'm not saying that they're not already there and some of the leaders aren't there, but these young folks that are joining law enforcement, they are joining for the right reason. I believe that. I really do
Yeah.
believe that. They're just more inclusive. They're not, I mean, I knew who was sitting when I was in law enforcement in the early 80s. I knew who was sitting across the table from me. I knew who he or she was, right? But also knew that he was going to back me up. But also knew at the end of the day, I got in my Prius, he got his F50, 150, and we went our separate ways, right? My legs didn't get up under his table. His legs didn't get up under my table. But we were able to work together. That's all we're asking you to do. Do your job. It's just a job. And so I think the next generation is going to give us what we need.
Yeah. And then when you speak about the next generation, I think like that social situation of what's been happening, like you said, George Floyd, Mike Brown, all of these things, people are watching. And I think they'll include that in their training as well. And that's why it's important that I think law enforcement get this worldview of training, talking to sociologists, reading the data, understanding people's psychology. All of this stuff is important because you're interacting with people. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not, I read this article where, and this has been going on for a while, where there's like this militarization of law enforcement now, rather than understanding of people. You're interacting
Yeah.
with people. You're not out here combating war. And not saying that the job isn't hard, but
Right.
why are we using all of these intense weapons instead of putting these resources into providing mental health resources and helping law enforcement understand those types of situations?
Right. But let's get back to what you were saying earlier, because you were talking about the climate of it's always about we got to be tough on crime. I mean the article by the Center for Police guy Phillip was talking about, that's the rhetoric. It's like we got to be tough on crime, and if we don't pour money into police officers or the prison, we're gonna see, it's gonna blah blah blah. But people are beginning to go, no, maybe not. But that's still the rhetoric that we hear.
Right. And unfortunately, that rhetoric, it's very multifaceted, like where it comes from. And what's horrible about it is that it's only multifaceted until it happens to you, until you lose someone, until something happens to you personally. And by that time, it's too late. And a perfect example of this, again, it being multifaceted, and I always think about the media when I think about this, right? So we already talked about politicians, misusing data. So that already gives data like by,
Right.
because anyone can use it any way they want, and that includes it for it to be unethical. When you think about it, the media has a huge drive in how we look at the criminal justice reform, what's going on around you, and what's happening. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is just like this severe abuse from the media when it comes to crime reporting. I saw this really interesting article about how the media had covered, this 18-year-old who was accused of rape, out of all things. He goes to trial, he wins, he's completely innocent. But did the media follow up to see if he was okay and to report this? No, they didn't. It took his due diligence to say, hey, either you report on this or I'm going to sue you, that they do, that they actually do that. So,
Wow.
and it's heartbreaking. It really truly is, because the media could be doing so much better than what they're doing,
Amen.
but if it
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm-hmm.
leaks, that's what I mean. That's been going on since the 70s. And they could be doing, whenever you were talking about, you had just mentioned something about, no, Kelly, you mentioned something that jogged my memory about community policing, right? So Biden's huge on that. It's a huge catchphrase for him. He's mixed for me, especially because the lack of criminal justice reform that he actually has implemented to this point, and also his history. So I can go down a whole road. But he put a lot of funding into community policing, right? And everyone's like, well, what does that mean? And a lot of individuals were very worried that a lot of that money was going to go towards police instead of what it should be going towards, which is community prevention, such as mental health resources, such as housing, such as after school programs. And so just to really make it full circle, it's like, okay, the media, and you could actually report on that. And I'm not talking about just a 4-minute stint of, such and such police department was out today handing out ice cream. No, you should be doing talking about, it's let you guys know they're using data now. You please feel free to contact your local police, your police department for your annual reports, or please feel free to talk about other policies or ideas that you may have. And so I just really got this idea because after seeing John Oliver, who I absolutely adore on HBO, crime reporting. And I'm like, you know what? You are just so right. That's another segment within our society are not doing their due diligence. They're just not. And it's very, very upsetting because they really impact us so much. And again, what's sad is that they're not putting out what people need, and it's too late.
Right.
Someone's already lost their child, already lost, their mother, their father.
Yes.
And it's always when, so I remember a lot of conversation talking about, especially when I think, especially with George Floyd, everybody was afraid that eventually the conversation would die down and we would stop talking about this. And so it's like with the media, like you said, and BJ, I remember you saying at one point as well, it's just like we take on these sound bites really quickly. A sound bite is the right word for it, but we take on this at this one particular moment, we talk about it for a hot second and then it's gone away. And I think that there needs to be some responsibility on their end to continue that conversation and to not let certain things just continue to pass. Oh, this is a moment, we're talking about this now, and then we're moving on when people's lives are at stake. And so even with the data part of it, putting out inaccurate data to scare people, a scare tactic. So it's like you're over. So when we have one crime, when one particular crime happens in a community, now, oh, everybody's out here to get you. And it's like, no, that's not true. So that's why this is a really good conversation that we're having, that people, I think communities should take ownership in looking at the data for themselves and not just listening to the media sound bites that talk about for a particular moment. So you have to look at it from the sense of, okay, so what happened in this particular crime? And is it true that people are out here just going crazy at the moment? I just think that the data, you should look at the data before just listening to whatever statistic they're talking about.
But, also, Kelly, you make a huge point, is that, for us, I would have to say, speak for myself for a second, growing up, I didn't have anyone who looked like us, who was in, evidence-based policy that's new, it's brand new. And, so to me, it feels like there's not enough ongoing conversation about it and how to use it. And the importance and also the ethical compliance that we should have to know our audience and make it more digestive for them. What bothers me is that when they're like, oh, it's on our website. So you'd expect for someone who has no data background to go onto their website and download, whether it's from a coding source, like I know earlier I was talking about Python. Or Python. I was listening, like, I don't know what she's talking about, but or maybe we have also on our part, our responsibility to make sure that it's reaching our community to be able to make that more digestible. And
Yeah.
so I think it's important that, you know, these institutions are putting out their annual reports and making them available. They're explaining them, you know,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, you know, BJ, you mentioned like not every police department has the funds to just have like an analytical, you know,
Right.
section or a data section or a data working group. Like, no, like I understand that, but what's really difficult is that there should be, just like there should be like a data working group, there should,
Right.
but I know that there can't be.
Yeah.
Another thing that's really interesting to me too is that, and this is really connecting this really quickly, is that I was reading an article. It mentioned about community policing, right? Getting out there, knowing your community. Well, when you think about it, and BJ, please, you know, and Kelly, if you know anything about this, any type of department I've been a part of or read about, they just have just like this group of individuals who are responsible for community policing. There's only a few officers. It's not the whole squad coming through who are trained, you know, which is understandable because, you know, the bandwidth that they may not have, not everyone may be able to take a moment and really get to know their full community.
Yeah.
So again, I think it goes back to BJ when you mentioned the lack of resources that really makes this an issue. But just to round it out, Kelly, you know, I think the point in that, you know, just to add on to that is that also our responsibility as researchers, people of color, to make it easier and understandable for other audiences.
Yeah.
And that's what I was always taught as a scholar, is just making sure you've got academic can say an academic, but you also need to make it accessible to people to understand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That I mean, you guys are hitting it all. I mean, you guys are firing it up. I love it. And you're absolutely right. I mean, but that's the part that I kind of want us to talk about. There are several things I've been noticing. I've been put my head down. I've been writing notes. I don't want to forget. But you're right. We got to make it simple. And I think one of the part of some of the work that I do is trying to help community members know what to ask for. You can ask this of your law enforcement agency. Ask for a report. This is what you can ask for. Ask them if they're researching data. Because one community, I was suggesting, I said, well, maybe you might want to ask the new sheriff to give you some information on not only the demographics of who's in his jail, but what's the educational level. You know, how many people in his jail don't have high school diplomas? Because that could probably give you some insight as to what's either not happening or should be happening in your local school. You know, so if you can ask him to start tracking that though, and you have a right to ask as a community member, because you want to prevent individuals from going into the jail, especially if they're juveniles. You want to find out, so why is this 17-year-old sitting in, you know, this particular county, these small communities? And law enforcement is made up primarily of Mayberries. I mean, the minorities are agencies 500 plus. The bulk of police departments in this country are less than 100 officers. So there's really, you know, so everybody knows everybody. And so you can ask these questions, but you don't know how to, you either don't understand how to ask or what to ask for. So both of you are absolutely correct. We've got to figure out, and what I want to, you know, it's like, I got a couple of things I want to say, but right now I kind of want to get you guys input on what are some ideas that you might have for a local community who an agency doesn't have this. So local agency, you might not have a crime analyst, but I know a retired crime analyst who lives in the community. I mean, so what is it that you would suggest for some of these individuals who are looking at whether, because I think police reform is going to start at the small community in Mayberry. That's just where it's not going to, I mean, that's where we all are from. And that's where police reform is going to. So from your perspective as researchers working with law enforcement, what are some of the things that you think folks can at least start asking of their agencies to be transparent, that would help them kind of begin to go, oh yeah, my police department is looking at stuff that's going to really have an impact on crime or the safety, whatever. So you guys kind of talk about that for a minute. If you have some insight to that.
Kelly, you want to go first, or you want me to?
You have to say.
Go ahead.
Really quickly, right off the bat, I would have to say that I think it's so difficult. And George Floyd was truly a turning point for us colored people. It really is, because it gave us the voice, and finally, I guess you can say, just like, the here it is in your face, that yes, we can ask questions, and we have questions, and we have rights. And before that, I don't think that we've ever had that solid, concrete evidence, so much so right into your face, where it's just like, okay, now we have questions, we have rights. And so I think that we're still in the beginning stages of understanding and realizing that we do have those rights, but we don't know what to do with them. I honestly, we don't know the extent to which we can take our rights and how to work with them and not be scared, and to know that we also have our rights too. So I think that as colored people, we're still trying to navigate that, because we haven't utilized it before. You're asking us to utilize a skill set that is to us.
That's
I
fair.
think that is an issue that we somehow need to get over, obviously through education. So, with that being said, I think that's an awesome question. It's something that I really haven't even thought about on a local level, because like you said, BJ, because most of these departments are small, and it's everyone that right? Everyone knows everyone. So I think there's also another issue, because why do I want to complain if I know Jeff is, my mechanic, and then his sister? So that's another issue in itself as well. I think that it would be interesting to see, because even you mentioned, BJ, like there are younger people, and Kelly, you mentioned it too, who are coming in, making the workforce more diverse. And it's almost like, and it's part of it, like they should be stepping up and taking responsibility as well, and just being more innovative. I think that innovation is a phrase that is lost upon within, police departments, giving just the nature of what they do. They're out there, on the ground, boots on the ground. They don't have time for research. They don't have time. I'm in a call for service right now. Like I'm not, so it's really difficult. But I would think too, I would love to see universities and local colleges who have criminal justice programs to start to reach out to their local departments to work with them. I think that's great. And there's plenty of grant funding to do so. I know that, is it Georgetown University in DC? I'm right outside of DC, but they work heavily with the DC Police Department. I mean, a lot. And so I can only assume that, colleges, universities can start taking up the reins and just being that support, that backbone for more innovation and evidence-based practices for communities, whether it's local, whether it's urban. So I think that'd be a great place to start as well.
Wow, I totally agree.
Oh man, awesome. That's great. That's really good. Yeah, go ahead, Kelly.
I totally agree, because I remember I had the privilege of sitting in a criminology class, especially grad class, but also a couple of undergrad classes where we had officers come in and just sit with us, and learn about what we were learning about, and engaging with us in the conversations that we're having about social justice or criminology, or what does it look like on an individual basis. And so law enforcement reaching out to the community in terms of that, and entering the classroom, getting that, like I said, the well-rounded viewpoint of people in general. And so I think that too, Finesse, that was an amazing point that you made in terms of starting with the universities, because we're going to school to learn about this stuff, and that real world practice is really important, in internships and stuff like that. So, having students reaching out to police officers and creating that really well-rounded community that involves officers, community, individuals, and academics.
Well, another example of that too is like I just call him Chuck, but he's the executive director for Executive Research Forum. I was speaking with him. He had just started a program with Baltimore University looking at internships for Black police officers to really round out of the force more. So obviously, the more people of color and more diverse, you're really looking at better outcomes when it comes to
Yeah.
interactions with citizens. So they actually started that program too. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that, we were really starting to see academics, start to reach out a little bit more and say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that?
Yeah.
And kind of just get more involved, because it's, the community can only do so much. They can only go to so many, gatherings, or, BJ, I'm sure that you know about a lot of events, because police, I mean, honestly, departments do host a lot of different events, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's only, a certain department, like this, small molecular level of the individuals who are doing the part for the entire force. And so you're not really getting, what the whole coverage of what you need. And so I think that starting with, educators reaching out and just having different programs would be really, really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah. And I'm glad you guys brought in the university, because I was talking to a friend of mine. He was talking about the basic law enforcement training. That is basically the same across the country. And one of the things that he said is the fact that they're not allowing academia to come into training. And just like you said, Kelly, what are we doing as law enforcement? We're dealing with individuals, human beings who are having crisis. So why would I not want a university who studies that stuff to tell me how to figure out how this human being is reacting, and how I need to interact, or what I need to do to just relate to this human, because I'm a human, and relate to this other human in this moment. But you want to continue to have this, I've got the power. But then the other piece of that with law enforcement that people have to understand, I'm only in front of you for so many minutes. So I really can't, because the thing that I promote on my website is Alternative to Violence Project. And this is an organization that started out as prisons, and it talks about communication skills and all those types of things, getting people to understand how to communicate and solve the problems. Because one of the things we do as Black folks, we're constantly calling 911 to come into my house because I picked up my boo's phone and I found out he creeping, or I found out she creeping. And now you don't call the police in to solve this problem between the two of you. I don't really want to be in the middle of that. And I, and I only probably got 5 minutes to deal with a relationship that's been here for 10 years. So we as a culture and as a people, we got to figure out, how do we teach individuals, not just Black folk, but just people in general, how to solve their own problems without calling government into their space, who has no idea what's going on. And because, we walking into your house, we don't know you, we don't know what's in the kitchen. That might sound very dramatic, but as a police officer, I'm walking into your house. And then I walk into your house and people are angry, right? So so as a human being, I'm watching, because I'm like, I don't want nothing to happen to me, because I won't creeping. But see, we got to think about. So the thing is, how do we educate community members how to solve their own problems, those types of problems, without calling a popo into your space? And then when I kill somebody, now you're mad at me. I'm not saying that I should have done that, but what I'm saying is you brought me into this argument.
So I think it goes back to resources and funding, and what type of programs that we're doing that are preventative, rather than at that particular situation when we do have to get to the point to call law enforcement. So I'm thinking about social workers, putting more funding into that so that they're not overwhelmed with the caseload, so that they can pay attention to signs and be more attentive to people. They're doing a great job, but I think that, like with anything, we need more funding to do better, or to become what the community needs to prevent these from happening, so that law enforcement doesn't have to get involved.
See, and that goes for me, because, and I know you guys know this goes all the way back to the 1920s, right? This goes back to the Chicago riots, the Harlem riots, the Kerner Report, and they all did commissions, right? Everybody did all these little studies as to how do we keep these Negroes from burning down stuff, right? And all of them said the same DNA. All those commission reports said, in order to help folks, things be better, we need to increase living wages, education, healthcare, police brutality. But nobody's putting any money in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if our leaders had kind of said, okay, let's go ahead and take care of all of that because we just want to be equal and be
Mm-hmm.
okay, we may not be here. But nobody, everybody wants to put money in prisons and law
Yeah.
enforcement. But you knew back in the 20s when they were burning down buildings in the Kerner reports and all that, that this would make our America more equal and safer if you, and for me, it's education. For
Mm-hmm.
me, it's education because everybody gonna go through the school building at some point. Everybody gonna come watch Ray Ray play basketball. So my thing is, why can't all the resources be in that same building?
Mm-hmm.
And now we know, okay, Ray Ray didn't do his math last night. Well, it's because Ray Ray watched a dead body in the street all night long. So why don't I have a psychologist in the building when he comes back to school? I mean, and then we can help him and the entire
Yeah.
family, process this and then at least give him his first 12 years, give him a good first 12 years so he at least got a foundation. But what we want to do is, tough on crime, give it more, give more police stuff and blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. So here we go. And,
And so that, yeah, and so that goes back to the prison school pipeline. Why are we putting funding in? Why are we studying kids to see how many more prisons to build rather than more employment opportunities in their communities? Like
yeah.
it just, to me, that just doesn't make any sense. And the crazy thing is, because like I said, I worked in a school system for 5 years. The kids know it. When they look at their building and they see how damaged and how things are not being kept up, they know that people don't care about them, you know? And so it's like you're creating a culture of children that by fifth grade, know that their community or their government doesn't care about them, because they're not putting those resources into things that they need. And our kids, like, they're watching. They watch the news. They ask about Mike Brown. They ask about George Floyd. Why did he do that? What happened? So it's not that they're unaware
Yeah.
of what's going on. They might not fully understand or comprehend or know the history about it, but they're aware. And so I think, like, there needs to be a responsibility for governments to put in those resources for the children, so then that we're not having to build more prisons, or we're not building more prisons and making money off of it.
That's what Finesse was saying. It's all about that capital.
That's what it is. Unfortunately, BJ, what you mentioned is like Frederick Douglass was a libertarian. This is like, give me funds to get on my 2 feet and then leave me alone. Give me what he said. And guess what? There is still no equality for us. We are still fighting, and this is the consequences of it. Our kids, our families, it's just being torn apart. It is all about the money. And also, when it comes to money, it's not getting into the right hands. Kelly, when you're talking, BJ, when you're talking about all these things that are needed, it's not getting into the right hands. I mean, whenever I was in my undergrad, I tried social work for a little bit. I had internships, and I couldn't even handle the caseload then. I couldn't handle it. It's just too much. So you're underpaying all these individuals, right? Take care of the problem. So, this makes me think of too, it's just like, Kelly, when you mentioned diverting, these calls for service to other professionals such as mental health or, what have you. It's just like, okay, well, how do you guys, I mean, it's a great plan. It really is. How do you plan on sustaining this if you're not even paying these individuals enough or really giving enough money to support the infrastructure? Oh, and then also, are you training the 911 call, like the 911 respondent to answer the phone, to know how to direct the calls? Are we even talking about that yet? Or y'all just gonna say, it's gonna do this and it's gonna work? It's like, okay, but I don't quite know if you realize that this still isn't working. It's still isn't working. We're not giving people enough funds and the people who need it the most to solve this problem. And it's just ongoing, similar to Biden's criminal justice history and until last year. I will never stop mentioning that. I will not.
Well, you know what? I got a question I'm gonna ask you guys just a minute, but I want to kind of talk, Finesse. We're talking about the alternative 911 calls, right? So we're doing that here in Durham. We're training the 911 call takers as to where to send the resource because we have some group of individuals that will go instead of sending law enforcement. But which I support all of that. but also what I'm asking the person, what I'm saying to the group, because I'm asking them for data. So let's say you went to BJ's house 50 times, and now that I have this new group coming to respond, are you going less? Are law enforcement going after, are they still coming afterwards? I want to know, because basically, just like you said, Finesse, all you did was put another cog in the wheel. Because because police officers can refer BJ to the resources or the social worker. And so that's what the same thing this other person is doing. But if that resources and the stuff isn't there, is it really solving the problem? And you've just put another cog in the wheel because I can send somebody to a social worker as a police officer, but you just put this other cog saying, we're going to send you to these resources too, but the resources aren't there or don't have the capacity to help. So are we really making a difference? So that, for me, that's going to determine success or failure of these alternative people going. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
if we're going to do that, then you're going to have to build capacity on the back end, because the capacity has never been there for law enforcement. Because we pick up the phone at 3 o'clock in the morning and go, we ain't got no beds. What's the difference for the other one if you haven't done that? Right. So, I mean, you just kind of, anyway. So, my producer wants me to ask both of you, the work that you're doing, do you get any pushback from people of color based on, because, you guys kind of pushing the envelope as to where like we're kind of saying as a culture, we need to stand up as a people. And sometimes it's uncomfortable to hear, and it's uncomfortable, but you guys can say that because you got data that backs that. You know what I'm saying? Like that, the work that Kelly's doing for me, one of the things that I was kind of surprised, we found out that one of the things that law enforcement runs, the first thing that we're finding out is the first resistance to law enforcement is just the verbal command. People are not even a police officer saying, if you would just do X, we would be okay. And people are failing to just do verbal command. So are you guys getting any resistance back on the work that you do when it comes to, because we're mainly talking about, folks of color that we're talking about, some of them.
Mm-hmm. For me, I haven't, I have a very strong personality.
Really?
For over 12 years. And, at this point, I'm an expert at this. This is
Right.
what I do. This is my love. But I think that it's important whenever I am talking to someone who is, of color, they know if I am telling you about yourself, it's coming from a good place. It's coming from a good place.
Yeah.
I'm talking about progress. I'm talking about what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing. Speaking of data, right before this phone call as well, not right before, but I was doing a little bit of research. Like, I'm thinking about compliance, right? Because BJ, you and 5 is all about compliance. So let's look at some research about compliance. Let's look at, what makes individuals not compliant, what makes police officers not compliant or compliant. And do you not know there's not like just a lick of research out there? There are not really extensive research. It's all word of mouth. It's like, well, what we go through and we're tired. It's like, well, we should have something a little bit more scientific to that, right? Like if, the generation, and Kelly, I'm sorry, I don't want to speak for you, but like if I'm not pushing the envelope, who else is going to? We have to push the envelope in order to make some progress. So again, if I have to break up something that's uncomfortable, then I'm going to do it because I know that I've come from the right place, a good place, and an ethical place. And I'll keep fighting a good fight and saying what I want to say because plenty of other people out there are doing it that aren't coming from a good place. They're not coming from the perspective of people of color.
Right.
So,
awesome.
I really do think it's really important that we continue to have these serious and hard conversations.
Right.
Cool. And I think to your question, I definitely think that having the academic side of it and understanding people. And so being able to say to a person, hey, like at the end of the day, you living is more important than whatever's happening. But I also understand why you're frustrated. So having that dual understanding and being able to understand why we're frustrated, having that conversation first. I get it. You've probably been pulled over multiple times. So you're frustrated. You're sick of why they're pulling you over. But at the end of the day, where do you want to be at the end of the day? At home. So I also think we also have to have faith in our justice system to be able to reach out to those to take whatever's happening, whatever the situation was, to go to our justice system and be able to rely on them that justice is going to be served as well. So I think that part of the community, the community also has to have that reliability with the justice system to do the right thing and have the right outcome. So yeah.
So I have a question for you because I have honestly I've been looking at different things, data related,
Yeah.
not and I've been trying to really like just dig deep on this. And I just wonder what it's going to take for us to really to start to change our outlook on the criminal justice system, because there's been so many horrible things that's occurred and continues to occur. And there is no right or wrong answer. You don't even have to answer me now. This question is for you too, but it's just like, how do we switch that? How do we make that switch within our community to really have some faith? Because as you know, it's so hard to have it.
Yeah.
I just don't. I'm just really curious to know, like, and again, this isn't all about data, right? This is about
Yeah.
just people being on the ground, like, being around your family, your friends, and, seeing what you see through the media. It's, and there's not, again, there's not a right or wrong answer. And I still don't have the answer for it, but I just wanted to know what you guys thought about that. Like, what do you think that we can do to really start to change our perspective?
Oh, see, yeah, I want to take that one. I want to take that one. I want to take that one. You're right. We got to, as a community, we got to change our perspective. And I'm getting ready to release a film that talks about law enforcement is not the same law enforcement as our ancestors, right? And we talked about the fact that a lot of individuals are leaving policing now. This is a prime opportunity. This can be a movement for our allies and for Black folks to get into the justice system at every level. And when we're in the system, I mean, I think it was a woman the Black female in Michigan that just got appointed to a Supreme Court position as a judge, and her great grandfather was lynched. So I think we're missing this moment. Could be the moment that we're looking to change the justice system. NAACP Legal Defense said the gateway to justice is the district court system, district court, right? And so we got to look at, yes, individuals are leaving, but this is also an opportunity. We also have to remember that white supremacy and elitists, white supremacists down here in the South use law enforcement as a way to step up, right? As a way to get money and wealth, right? It was a way to do. So why can't we as Black folks do the same thing? So every kid may not be ready for college. And law enforcement, they play this thing, but it's all dangerous. It ain't. Okay, I'm not going to say that it's all about treating human beings like human beings or having crisis, right? And we're looking for people who like human beings, customer service. For the kid that's shoving you your Big Mac, who has a smile on the face, that's the person who needs to be a police officer. And then they don't have to have a college degree. They're having $10,000 signing bonuses. All right. You staying home with your mama, you can help pay the bills. So we need to look at this as an opportunity, that this is a way for us to get into this, because this is where the power is. The power is in the judicial system. Do you understand what I'm saying? The white, do you know the white guy who is the tattooed white guy from the Capitol, what's his name? Fanoni? You know what I'm talking about, right?
I know exactly who you're talking about. Yes,
okay,
yes, of course.
Okay. So here now, I'm sure he's a really good guy. I have nothing against him, but what you got to understand is CNN hired him. Okay. He just said the other day he was annoyed because there was no Republican at the memorial service for the Capitol, right? And he even basically I believe he said, I support Republicans. You got to remember, the industry is white males who are primarily Republicans. They've already signed 1,000 things and sent this to the leaders of our country. See, you're talking about journalists are missing this. So you got white male police officers who are mainly Republicans are saying to Republicans, y'all need to stop this rhetoric because we getting beat up. They hired this white guy. They didn't hire the Black guy who deterred the protesters from going in and killing some congressmen. They hired a white guy tattooed up who's speaking on behalf of the rest of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're missing an opportunity here as allies and Black people that we need to come in, join law enforcement, become judges, become lawyers, and that's how we're going to change the mindset, because this is our moment. I honestly, truly believe this is our moment. This is our moment. And allies who believe in the true justice. Because what they going to say? All of a sudden now you're going to say you don't support the police?
Mm-hmm.
You've been saying it for 400 years. And now all of a sudden, it's becoming more diverse. It's becoming more inclusive. And now all of a sudden you're going to say you don't support the popo. We're missing an opportunity here.
Wow, that was powerful, BJ. That was so powerful. It makes me so proud to be on this call with you guys as well, because it's like we need more individuals who are in power, who have a voice, and who are willing to stand up and to say something. And that was powerful. Thank you.
Yeah, well, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, we probably gonna have to do this again, y'all, because we crawling up on an hour. Look, I ain't gonna call nobody's name out who said I don't know what I can do 2 hours. 2 hours. But I think we did pretty good. So this has been some good stuff, y'all. I really appreciate it. Yeah. So if either one, yeah, we'll definitely gotta maybe we'll see something that we want to talk about. But I think as we do this and Kelly's work, maybe when we get through and Kelly gets through going through the Washington Post data and also the Finesse, you were talking about the verbal, I didn't realize that was out there till we kind of started looking that they tracked that the number one resistance is just police officer telling an individual to stop. And that's the number one resistance. So the thing is, if you just simply comply, you're probably going to survive this interaction. And we just got to get people to understand that. You may not, you may not like the way as a police officer I say, sit down or do this, because I'm a human being, because I want to go home too. Okay. I'm not your auntie asking you to put the gun down. I'm a police officer that's doing a job of saying put the gun down. So that tone is going to come across a little different than your auntie asking you to put it down.
Absolutely. And that was the only thing that I found within the research, was saying that what makes a citizen compliant or not compliant is how a police officer is interacting or how their emotions are being conveyed. And it's just like what you just said, like, you don't know me. You don't know me. Like, you're gonna be friendly whenever I'm going 50 over. Like, no, you're not gonna, that's not gonna happen.
So wait a minute. So you're okay. You're trying to find the data as to what makes a person not comply? Is that what?
Yes.
You're looking to find what makes BJ not compliant.
I'm actually looking to figure out, BJ, you pull me over, okay? And you say, can I have your license registration? And I'm like, no, you can't. Well, why am I already acting that way? Is it because of your body? Like how? Like, what's going on? Where's the lack of communication? Right? Communication is key. You mentioned that multiple times, Kelly. You as well. And so it's talking about just trying to figure out what is there. What is the missing link? We know communication is, but what is about that interaction that is making a citizen non-compliant?
So I think part of it too is just the understanding of the history. So people are frustrated, and that comes across as very much so you don't know the situation. You could have been stopped multiple times over the day. You're stopping me for what? What did I do? You're stopping me over something minor. Why am I being stopped over something minor? If I could get it fixed, I would have gotten it fixed. Right. And so people are frustrated. And so I think immediately when you see in law enforcement, you're kind of like, man, what is he stopping me over for? And I think that's part of the initial interaction. And then that's perceived as enforcement. Well, you have an attitude with me now. Well, I have an attitude because of what I've seen on the news or what I've read in books or what I witnessed with George Floyd. And so, for example, think about it this way. George Floyd was killed and then you get stopped the next day. You probably on high alert as a civilian. Right. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know who, and so I think like I said, I think that both sides need to really look at the situation and what has happened prior or happened in that person's life to kind of lead them to not complying, you know?
Right. And
But
I
I
know
also, like you said, BJ, there's only 20 seconds. So we can't do that in 20 seconds.
psychologists, they're there to get there, in and out, do their job, be safe for themselves and the citizen.
Yeah.
And I get that, but I'm also curious about the compliancy rates before George Floyd as well. You know, and it's just really frustrating because for us, even when I got pulled over last time, I was just like, okay, here we go. You know, like I'm like, let me call somebody.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a heightened awareness in our community. Like
we look up like that in an instant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, yeah. And I know we're kind of probably running over, but I had a friend of mine who's a black female police officer. She says, as she was walking to the car with a black female and her black son, she literally heard the woman say, "Oh, it's a black police officer." Like she was getting ready, it seemed as though if she was to imply she would have been having a little bit of an attitude if it had been a white officer. So it's all of this compounding everything that's going on. They're fearful, the conversations around the table, the talk, all of that has an impact. But we got to figure out that I try to tell that white officer is walking up to your car, that's not Chauvin. And so you don't even know that guy, that white boy probably going home laying down with a woman darker than me. You know, but you're judging him. I mean, you know what I'm saying? We don't know that, but you dogging this white boy out who is biracial, you just don't know that. And so my thing is try to interact with however that officer is interacting with you. If he is interacting with you in a professional manner, then you got to go with that. And they're just doing a job. You know, but I get it. You know, like you said, because Kelly had to kind of have a little come to Jesus meeting with me. She's like, BJ, you got to remember that everybody's, you know, kind of emotional and you got to try to make sure you understand and stuff. I was like, okay, Kelly. Whatever, Kelly. But yeah. So anyway, so just so we can start wrapping this up, this has been fun. And I think, Finesse, if you don't mind, I would like for you, when you do get that research, and if we run across it while we're doing the work that we do, that could be something we could come back and talk about. You know, what is it that, you know, our history that makes us non-compliant? And it just maybe it's just the climate right now. I mean, it just simply may be the climate. Because I do these presentations and I'm actually looking at Black mothers with tears in their eyes going, I just simply want my Black son to get home. That's it. I mean, it's just, even if they've never had an interaction with law enforcement, it's this climate that has raised this emotion within us and our ancestors' DNAs in us. And we're just emotional because of what, and like you said, the media is feeding this to us.
Yeah.
Real quick, Lieutenant Nazario, you watching a guy in Windsor that said that he was tased. I mean, he got sprayed. Check it out. But the thing is that, as you say, nobody goes back in. They asked him 50 times to get out of the vehicle. But the media makes it look like he stopped and they maced him. I'm not saying that the officers did everything correctly. I'm not even, there was some stuff that they should not have said and should not have done. But the way the media is portraying it, the officers are totally wrong. They asked that man 50 times to get out of the car. I counted them. But yet they're making it look like he was the victim. I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, that they did some things that were unprofessional, right? But I can't ask you 50 times, sir, to get out the car. At some point, I got to do my job. You know, it's something. Yeah.
And that's the problem. I think that may I just say it? I'm just gonna say it. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. So be ready.
Okay.
I'm not trying to say that our community is all about being the victims, but at some point, I'm tired of being the victim and I want to have control, is what I'm trying to say. Because don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that we're not victims, but at some point, I want the control. I want to be the person who says, yes, I'll get out of this car. But by the way, what's your badge number? And what's your partner's badge number?
Yeah.
And then I'm taking it to a whole nother level.
There you go.
You do your job.
Yep.
That's where that's what I'm taking it.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not trying to say that, we're not victims. We will
Right.
forever be victims. I'm trying to take my power back. I'm trying to take it to the next level.
Right.
I'm about to take all your money and I'll be passing you. I'll be driving past you while you're sitting on the street. How about that?
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying.
Yeah. And Finesse, thank you. And we're going to close on that. That's the other part too. That as Black people, and that's another part of my job. Is like, you guys can file complaints, because what you got to remember is that officer got a mortgage. That's a job. So trust and believe. If you check me as a police officer, I'm either gonna stop doing what I'm doing or continue to doing it at some point. A police executive like me is just sitting there sometime waiting for, I just need one more complaint to get rid of Kelly. I just need one more complaint to get rid of
Not
Kelly.
me.
But I can't get the community. But I can't get the Black community to file a complaint because they don't think anything's gonna happen. And I'm trying to let you know, all y'all need to do is tell me, because I'm at home at 3 o'clock as a police executive. I don't know. Tell me I got one out there that I need to get rid of. But y'all got to file the complaint first. That's how you do just like any job. Give me the complaint, let me validate it, and I'm gonna go make them sell ice cream. But I got to know first. So that's the power. That's the
and then
power.
you got to make it home first. You got to make it home.
Yeah, but we'll take care of that. We'll take care of that.
Yeah.
All right. I keep saying we're gonna end this, but Finesse keep bringing up stuff. Finesse like, I got one more thing to say. So, Finesse, I'm gonna let you start out. Anything you want to close out with for us?
I just want to say thank you so much, BJ, for having me. And as well, I keep saying that, I don't speak for you, Kelly, but I've always have so much fun talking to you guys. This is the second time.
Oh my gosh.
Had a conversation, and I both of you are so impressive, and just thank you so much for having me on. And I hope that I can be back on. I also learned from you guys, and if it's not, BJ, if it's not, wasn't for your podcast and what you're doing, then we're not having these important conversations to elevate, Black and brown individuals. So thank you so much for what you
do. Thank you, Finesse. It's very kind of you. Kelly.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you guys, BJ. Thank you as always. You keep me involved with the criminal justice side and doing what I love to do and my passion. Finesse, I will always be a fangirl for you girls. So yes. You are just amazing. Like, oh my gosh, you're amazing.
Yeah, Kelly could not. When we first met, Kelly just could not stop talking about you. Finesse.
I was like, is she on the podcast yet? We're gonna on the podcast. Yes, you just keep doing what you're doing, girl. And you're amazing. You're an inspiration.
Right, so. We're gonna get there together.
Thank you. Thank you to you both, and I hope to our listeners, you've heard something that you can use. Again, I'm pretty sure I always say that, and I'm going to bring some of the guests back, but these two definitely will come back, because the work that we're doing has to do with data, teaching people how to use the data to help police reform. So the three of us will definitely be back later on this year to talk about stuff. So I appreciate it. So as always, Kelly and Finesse, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the conversation. So for the listeners, thank you for those of you that are always supporting UN50. Be on the lookout. February 25th, I will be releasing a film called #Humans, HUEMANS, a guide to get home. It's actually going to be kind of a digital The Talk. So if anybody wants to, at 5 o'clock on February 25th, that will be released for the community members across the state and the country. Hopefully we'll take a look at that and help you get home safely. So for those that have always supported me, thank you very much. For those that are joining us for the first time as we do this podcast in Durham, North Carolina, the Bull City, as always, stay safe, stay well, and peace.